Peter R. Breggin MD is called the conscience of psychiatry for his many decades of successful reform efforts. His scientific and educational work provide the foundation for modern criticism of drugs and ECT and lead the way in promoting more caring and effective therapies. His books include Talking Back to Prozac, Toxic Psychiatry, Medication Madness, Psychiatric Drug Withdrawal, and now, Guilt, Shame, and Anxiety, Understanding and Overcoming Negative Emotions. Welcome to the Dr. Peter Breggin Hour.
Hello, my wonderful audience. It's always a delight to have this opportunity to talk to you. Here I am in my home office in Ithaca, looking out on the beautiful hill, looking out on my 3 bird feeders. And then I look down and I see the faces of my wonderful 2 guests. And you'll be able to see them too, because this is not just the Dr. Peter Breggin Hour radio. We are simultaneously being filmed, as we are for all our shows now. And all you have to do tonight or tomorrow is go to Dr. Breggin's YouTube channel, and you will see us live, not really live, but almost live. And you'll see us on video. You'll see us as a TV team. And I want to thank, again, PRN FM and Gary Null, who's the head of the station, just for providing this extraordinary opportunity for me to be able to not only be with you on the radio, which just doesn't feel as intimate to me, as also knowing that we are relating to each other, and you can see me and you can see my guests. My guests today are Pinar Miski. She's to my left on the screen. She's waving. Oh my God, she's dancing. She's very young. You have to forgive her, but she's a psychiatrist and a mature woman. Pinar Miski, M-I-S-K-I. She's in Baltimore, Maryland, unfortunately not in private practice, but fortunately for many, many patients, she works in a hospital where she is the psychiatric consultant to medical wards. And she'll tell you some about that. We haven't been on together since late December, so we'll just remind you, she can tell you a little more about what she does on those wards. And then to my right, I'm not sure where we'll all end up on the screen, is Pam Popper. Pam, PhD Pam. Pam is a doctor of all kinds. In addition to being a nutritionist, she did get an alternative medical degree, which she's not practicing right now. She's practicing nutrition at her wonderful wellness forum, Health. Pam is actually the best doctor I know. She has the most information, the most knowledge, and you can actually sign up with Pam and have her as a consultant, not a treating physician, but somebody who will help you and give you direction on whatever you're struggling with. She has done wonders for people who work with her in that way. She's got an incredible website that you can join. And Pam and I do courses together. I wouldn't have any real courses if it weren't for Pam Popper. I might ask Pam if she would catch us up a bit on how the courses are going. I mean, have you got any current information, Pam, on how we're doing?
Yeah, we're running the practitioner training course right now. Dr. Miski's teaching part of it. And so that class started a couple weeks ago,
I didn't even know that. Great.
Yeah. So, and we have some
I'm going to appear on that show a couple of times too, on that course.
Yeah.
Live.
So we're always
having psychiatrists, as well as lots of reading and other stuff, right? And videos galore.
Right, exactly.
How many videos do I have on that course?
I think there are like a couple dozen of them.
Is it too late for people to join now, or say wait till next time?
Wait till next time. And one of the reasons is that we're a few weeks in, and so it'd be hard to make up all the classes. And I think it's important to be live in the discussion. We have some pretty interesting discussions in these classes that we teach, all of the classes that we teach. In fact, that's one of the things I like about doing this type of teaching is we're dealing with adult learners who are really motivated and ask a lot of questions and show up ready, ready to dig in class. It's a fun way to teach. So yeah, but we'll run it again, of course. Of course.
And then there's a couple of other courses that people can join almost at any time.
Right. We have some online courses, and they're much less expensive because they're designed for the consumer who's looking for direction, and really needs to watch the videos and digest all this information with the group of people he or she's going to be working with, for example, to try to withdraw from psychiatric drugs or to improve their psychological and mental state. And tons of videos on those as well. A lot of them, most of them yours, right? So
Right.
Lots and lots of information on those.
So one is the consumer's guide for psychiatric drug withdrawal, basically,
Right.
and then the other is part one of a how to live life and how to help people, and the first part is about how to live life, and that's up now, right?
Right, exactly. And when people talk about this psychiatric drug withdrawal issue, if people have bad experiences with it because they don't have a plan. So I teach by analogy. I say, listen, if you just got a bunch of building supplies and had them delivered to an empty lot, and without a blueprint, you just started like throwing bricks on top of each other. I mean, it wouldn't take you long to make a mess. And that's kind of what happens when you do something that's complicated in healthcare. You throw stuff up against the wall and it doesn't work out so well. So take a step back, really learn about this and get a plan and a group, and you have a much better, just as you might expect. Plans make people more effective at whatever they do, So.
Now, do you have a call-in number that people can use to learn about my courses with you and all of your courses?
Yeah, 614-841-7700. We're open 12 hours a day, and now on Saturday, too. We're even open on Saturday. We just started that this year. I'm very excited. I'm not sure how excited everybody else around here is about it, but I'm very excited that we're open on Saturday. And I think a lot of other people are, too, because a lot of people are calling. It must have been like this pent-up demand for wellness forum availability on Saturday.
Well, and the good news is you can also go to my website, breggin.com, and just scroll down a little bit and you'll see a banner that talks about my courses and gives you the phone number and gives you the email where you can get attention about my courses, but also about all of the healthcare and the nutritional materials, these huge educational materials that laypersons and professionals take, that's on Pam's newly very expensive to improve and develop website, right?
Yeah, our platforms, our technology platform where our courses are posted is really upgraded. And I have to say, Breggin.com is a great resource. I mean, you could read, I've told people, you could read till the end of your days on your website. And by the time you would get to the end, if you could live long enough to get to the end of the content, you would have posted 100 more things
definitely
to read. Yeah, so you read one and a new one comes in. There's no end to it. So there's so many resources there, and I think anybody who's interested in mental health, psychological health, and health in general, you just find a ton of stuff on your website. I use it as a resource all the time.
I want to say this: since we went into being a television show, if you go to Breggin's YouTube channel. We are doing really well there, even better than the U2 Numbers show. My most recent show which was about something more dangerous than psychiatry that's evolving, and that is the big tech companies getting into mind control and literally developing means to connect the brain to AI, to artificial intelligence, doing it with electrodes, doing it without electrodes. This is such a disaster for humanity in so many ways. And I did a very interesting show with Melissa and Aaron Dykes on that. And I think we're at about 7,000 or 8,000 downloads on the TV alone, just on my website. And Aaron and Melissa put it up on their website. They have 30,000. They made it a special. They have 30,000 viewers on that most recent TV show that you'll find on my YouTube. And also their website's amazing, Aaron and Melissa Dykes. So I'm reaching out, folks. I'm expanding. I'm making more contacts, developing more ways of getting the word out. And it's really a wonderful thing to do. I mean, it's amazing when so many of my YouTubes way outperform any of my books and certainly my scientific articles. And one of my YouTubes now, one of my shorter YouTubes, and we're going to be doing them too. We're going to be starting very soon a second edition of Simple Truths About Psychiatry. One of them's almost at 1 million views now. So the word's getting out there. You're not alone in watching me. And I just so appreciate this wonderful audience we have. And then I appreciate right now, and I'm looking at you folks, I'm looking at my team. That's why I'm looking down instead of at the camera. But I'm just so glad to have you both here. Pam, what more do you want to say about your work or anything about that and what you're doing or anything?
Yeah. Well, we're steady as she goes on the informed medical decision making decisions based on evidence. And I had an epiphany over the weekend. I was at a conference. I was there for 5 days, and lots of people. A few hundred people I encountered during the 5 days that I was there. And I saw something that I think is really exciting to share. Okay. So I've been in this business for 25 years. And we today see people like we did 25 years ago. They've been beat up by the medical system. Nobody's told them the truth about anything. They never knew the risks. In fact, I saw an interesting statistic that 80% of lawsuits against doctors have an element of, well, they never told me this.
Absolutely. I see that in my own legal work where I'm a consultant.
Yeah. So people come here and they're pretty beat up and all that sort of thing. But then at this particular conference, there was a shift that I noticed. And there were still people who said, I'm all beat up and I need help. And that's why I came here. I was hoping to meet people like you. All right. But then there's this other population that was actually very big. And these were people who said, yeah, I've been coming to this conference for a long time, and 20 years ago I started doing research, and they tell the stories of not feeling helpless about their health anymore, and I found that incredibly encouraging because 25 years ago you didn't have those kinds of success stories. Like I got to the other side of it. One woman talked about her father had cancer, and she became convinced that the treatment was not a good idea and that it actually was going to kill him, and got him out of it, and they had another plan. And so this taking charge of things, I'm not helpless and I don't just have to do what doctors tell me and that sort of thing. There were more of these people that I encountered during this 5 days than ever going to something like this before. And I think that that's something that is really good for the kind of work that we're doing. And you know who it's really bad for? Traditional medical doctors and institutions that don't want to deal with these annoying people who ask questions and want information before they do things and all that sort of thing. So I think this is a really good sign of things to come. I came back very motivated.
That's wonderful. I get the same sense. I get the sense that the psychiatric profession is getting worse and worse, but people are deciding more and more not to be so helpless. So we got two dynamics going on. The general population more and more is deciding not to helplessly present themselves to any kind of doctors for psychiatric drugs. But at the same time, the power of their promotion and their advertising and their outright lies and misrepresentations is bringing in more victims. So it's kind of a dual situation that may be occurring in medicine as well. I'm so glad you brought up the issue of helplessness. A point I make again and again in my work and in my book, Guilt, Shame, and Anxiety, Overcoming Your Negative Emotions, is that psychological or emotional helplessness is the key to all personal failure. So when you're feeling overwhelmed with guilt or shame or anxiety or anger or numbness, underneath that, as the pivotal point, is where you gave up control over negative emotions, became overwhelmed by them. It's not a criticism, happens to me all the time, and then lost track of being in charge of yourself and having free will and choice making. So one of the keys, anytime you're in difficulty, whether the difficulty is purely personal, psychological, out of the blue, anxiety attack, depression, feelings of just shame and humiliation, the basic stuff, GSA, guilt, shame, and anxiety. When you get into any of this stuff, or you're actually under attack and feeling overwhelmed with the real outside forces, as in all of our lives. Certainly me and Pam, we deal with that a lot. And I'm sure Pinar does on the wards where you're being criticized or put in a difficult position. Always remember, I won't let myself become helpless. There's just nothing more important. You can say, I'm going to remain in charge of myself. I'm going to think. I'm going to reason. I'm going to assess. And if possible, I'm going to maintain a loving and caring attitude throughout this. So reason and love, and along with that, you can throw in ethics, but they all go together, reason, love, and ethics, and not being helpless. Just staying in charge of yourself. And it's like the key to life, folks. And it's the key to all of our work, empowering people. Pinar, are you with me on this kind of approach in general, that helplessness is a key factor that we have to really look out for?
I agree. I mean, absolutely. I think for all the people that want to question healthcare, I see an equal number of people that are just not wanting to be agents of their own, future, basically. They want to be, they identify with a sick role oftentimes, or they are kind of afraid of their own control or their own power. I don't know, it's case by case basis. I think sometimes people are afraid of further failures. Sometimes they've been so discouraged by multiple what they perceive as failures in the past or bad experiences that they feel like they can't take control, and it really scares them. And unfortunately, that does put control of your life and power in other people's hands who don't always have your best interests in mind, and it certainly has a psychological impact. I agree with you that a sense of decision making and freedom is kind of crucial to a healthy human being's development, and taking that away or not allowing that to happen is just not a good mix. But I could go on about this book that I was reading that kind of actually gave me a little bit of insight into that. So recently I was reading an old classic, Dale Carnegie's How to
Win Friends and Influence People.
Yes. How to Win Friends. See, I don't actually read. I do a lot of audiobooks, so I didn't really see the title. I'm like, hey, this had a lot of positive reviews. It's older, but what the heck, I'll give it a go.
I'll tell you how old it is. I read it when I was 18, I think, in high school.
Wow. And it was fascinating how he kind of points out all these interesting quirks of people's psychological makeup that in retrospect really prove true. And one of the things is that people want to feel important. And the sad reality is that unfortunately some people only get their sense of importance or love or attention through the healthcare system. And those are the people that you just unfortunately cannot help. But if you, like a lot of other people, I think, are kind of feeling fed up with medication side effects, or not feeling any better, or maybe you have a loved one who's going through this cycle of not feeling any better and their quality of life is deteriorating, it might be worth exploring some of these alternatives and see if there's something that might change things for yourself or your loved ones.
I want to tell a little story. I don't tell enough stories on my show. I was an intern, literally an intern. That's a long time ago. And I had a patient who was dying of cancer. She would only have a few more weeks probably left. And she had stopped eating and was probably then going and drinking and was probably going to go in a day or two, and didn't want to see her family, didn't want her children really loved her to come in and see her. The surgeon told me that he believed she could actually eat, but she had given up. So I went into her and I sat down. I don't remember if I sat down on the bed or next to her or across from her. And I talked to her about eating, and I had some food there, and reminded her how much her children loved her. And she said, well, I don't want to see them. I look so awful. And I said, well, they would love to keep you company in your last days. They would just love to do that. And I'd love to see you have the joy and the comfort of their company in whatever days or weeks you have left. We don't know. but you have to eat and drink some water. So would you, for the sake of your children, and let me give you some food and give you some water, and let's just get you looking better and being there for your kids. And she agreed, and she drank, and she took some food from me, and the children came in, and they had a wonderful, loving, caring time together until her death. And gosh, I wish I knew where this was, but one of the children was an illustrator. And he drew cartoons of me running around the hospital with my stethoscope and my white coat, giving encouragement and hope to people. It was really quite lovely. So there are no circumstances, really, or very few, under which, if you can bring together people to support each other and have the person who's suffering make some positive choices, there's hardly any situation that you can't improve for someone. It was a very striking experience. And I had experiences like that in the hospitals too then, where people would be completely psychotic and unable to relate and afraid to eat. And I just spent a little time with them and encourage them to eat and talk to them about their lives. And sometimes I'd be the admitting doctor, and they would look so well in the morning that the chief of staff, who knew the patient from previous hospitalizations, would insist she was nowhere near as sick when she came in last night. And I would say, oh, she was hallucinating bugs coming out of her skin. And he said, oh, really? I said, yeah, she was just actually like she was before. And she got ECT last time, but this time I spent some time with her, and she's just looking much better the following morning. Didn't really believe it, actually. I don't know if you thought I just was seeing things with her or not seeing things with her. But excuse me, folks. I mean, some of you know indirectly that at least that I'm recovering. I am in the recovery, non-infectious stage. Not that that matters to you all watching, but it matters to my patients. From a long virus, but I'm hearing that this has been happening to lots and lots of people. I pinned it on being older, but it was the longest recovery from a virus I've had. But I hear that's just going around. Pam, Pinar, are you seeing a lot of that? A lot of people sick?
Oh, yeah. There's a lot of people with influenza and other viral things.
You see them on your wards where you're consulting, right?
Yeah, actually. So I work in a medical hospital, so I work with the people that are admitted for non-psychiatric reasons, and just a lot of viral whatever things going around this year. Don't know if it has anything to do with anything, if it's just coincidental, but it's definitely, and different types of influenza seeming to go around through the different nursing homes and hospitals around here.
Is there more we can say? This is a spontaneous conversation, that direction that Pam brought it in when she brought up people are feeling less and less helpless. I don't think there'd be anything more wonderful than for us to talk some more about these issues of encouraging people to overcome helplessness. And I think Pam and Pinar, you both have constant contact with people who are feeling overwhelmed and helpless. Pam on the phone probably a lot for you, and sometimes in person. And Pinar, when you go to consultations in the hospital, that must just be there all the time. Maybe you could pick up on that theme, and let's kind of let people think through with this, because if we can get across during a good part of this session, how not to be helpless and how to help other people not be helpless, I think we would make a contribution with this show that would be unique.
Yeah, I'll start. When I'm talking to people, I'm struck by, first of all, the reticence that people have in challenging a doctor about something, or even asking questions, for fear of the reaction. And I was talking to somebody yesterday, and I teach by analogy, and I said, think of it this way. What if you were with a realtor looking at houses, and you started asking questions about the comps on the street and the property taxes and the school system, and somebody said to you, you're really bothering me, irritating me. Why should I have to answer those questions? You told me you wanted to live in a house in a nice suburb, but I take you to one. Why aren't you buying it? you would fire the realtor. I mean, nobody would tolerate that. And so I think that doctors have done a very good job, unfortunately, of making people feel that they are due a level of respect that nobody is due. I mean, nobody should be so important or so educated or smart that they don't just have to be compassionate to people. And part of that is helping people understand what's going on with their health. And another example of how people feel about healthcare professionals in general is someone will come to, call me or come into the office and they'll go, "Oh my gosh, you're going to be so mad at me." I say, why do you think I'm going to be mad at you? Well, I've had a lot of trouble doing some of the things that we talked about. And to be honest with you, I haven't been to the gym one time since our last conversation. I said, well, let me tell you the kind of things that you would do that would make me mad at you, like hurting my cat. Okay, that would make me mad. And if you slashed my tires in the parking lot, I would be very unhappy with you. Okay, but you didn't get to the gym. I mean, seriously, this is not anything that would make me mad. But the mere fact that it comes up, that the dynamic is such that I am not supposed to irritate you, and I'm not supposed to make you mad. And if I ever say anything that gives the impression, that I'm a little overbearing or whatever, I got to clear that up real fast because, and I think what a terrible thing this is that people feel this way about doctors and nurses and dietitians or whoever they're talking about in healthcare. And so disarming that's a lot of what I've learned from you, is doing everything you can to disarm it. And another thing people apologize for is crying. I had a stage 4 breast cancer patient on the phone crying, and she said, "I am so sorry, I'm just falling apart." I said, "You know what, if I were you, I'd be falling apart too. You cry all you need to. This is difficult." I said, so, and then that makes them cry more. It's like, "Oh my gosh, I have permission to cry." And I think, what kind of place were you yesterday at this medical center where crying is an irritation? Tell me about it. I mean, so I think that, the thing that we want to be is the opposite of health. Remember that episode of Seinfeld where George decides he has a successful interaction with a woman by being not himself. And he decides, I'm going to, everything that I would normally do, I'm going to do the opposite. And things go great for him for a while. And then he can't keep it up, right? But I think we can keep it up where everything that the medical profession would normally do in the interaction with a human being who's in trouble, we do exactly the opposite. And it's usually the exact right thing to do, the opposite of what would be done anyplace else.
You talked about disarming. Can you say some more about that? That I had encouraged you to think about that or something?
Yeah, well, the people are terrified. Sometimes they're aggressive and hostile when they come in because they're mad and they're frustrated or scared. I mean, some people cry when they're scared. Some people are aggressive when they're scared. And whatever they are, I tell them, that's okay. I don't blame you. This one woman screamed at me and she goes, "Oh, that was terrible." I said, "You know what? If I was in your situation, I'd be screaming at somebody." I said, "I got news for you. It's better to scream at me than a lot of other people because I don't mind that." Okay. So, and then they go, again, they're so used to the response being terrible. The response, you stop that. And or just walk. I've had people say that when they started crying, the doctor just walks out of the room, or the nurse says, "You got to pull yourself together. You have stage 4 cancer, and you're supposed to pull yourself together. What is that, right?" So anyway, so I think it is disarming to people, and sometimes it's the first step in establishing some kind of trusting relationship, because I don't want to have an adversarial relationship with people. And sometimes the only reason why we have an adversarial relationship with people is because every other interaction they've had with anybody has been adversarial. So they come in here and they expect, I need this woman to give me some information and all that kind of stuff. But, I'm coming in loaded for bear, So anyway, it's just a very unfortunate thing. And I'll tell you what I think is going to happen. Like going back to this conference this past weekend, people aren't taking it anymore. And I think what's going to happen is that bad doctors are going to go out of business. The word gets out. Like, this guy's terrible. Okay. And then good doctors, people find out about them. We have a great deprescriber. here in Columbus, and we keep her very busy. There's times sometimes when we keep her busy, plus she has a great reputation in the community. Sometimes we've almost made a problem for ourselves. It can be hard to get in to see her, right? So we need to load up those doctors with lots of patients, and we need to take the business away from the bad people and make them have to go do something else for a living. They would be good at being IRS agents. That's a job I would suggest for some of them. They could be, I'm trying to think of prison wardens, kind of thing. Those are good occupations for some of these doctors that are terrible people.
Yeah, that's right. I like the idea very much of disarming, just to kind of draw together these themes. We're talking about the helplessness people feel, and that's everyone. That includes me when dealing physicians, and with me, even with dentists. I went to a dentist years and years ago who was on the verge of retirement, and his hands, I'm talking about 25 years ago, when I was a doctor, I was a psychiatrist, and his hands were shaking as he tended to my teeth and drilled a hole. And I let him do it because I couldn't just say, Doc, your hands are shaking. This doesn't make any sense. And then I found out that he retired in a day or two, but I didn't get up and leave. It's just so important to remember in all areas of your life to be able to get up and leave, to be pleasant about it. Makes it much easier to leave if you don't get mad. It also makes it easier for you to see what's going on if you don't get mad. If you feel mad, that's a good signal. You're being hurt. Feeling mad means you've been hurt. So, think about that and what's going wrong in the situation. So we're talking about, not letting yourself be overwhelmed into helplessness, but also when we're trying to help people, how to do it without overwhelming them, without having all this authority that we may have as a parent or even a friend when somebody's in distress. And disarming oneself is very important. Right now, I'm communicating with a bunch of psychiatrists around the world in something called the Critical Psychiatry Network. Most of the people are in Europe and England, where actually psychiatry is a bit better in some ways, less drug company influenced in some ways, but it's still very similar and following our lead too much. But we're talking about violence in patients and whether patients are more violent than other people and so on. And one of the things I wrote onto this very large network, email network, where everybody in a second gets what you've pushed your button for your email. And I wrote that think of how different it would be if a great deal of psychiatric training, half or some big chunk, was based on teaching young doctors to be kind, caring, empathic, patient-oriented, and to treat their patients, and of course other people too, with Buber's I, thou, which is a kind of concept that we're in the presence of God relating to you, or the Quakers concept, I didn't mention that, of greeting that of God and everyone. Suppose we trained our psychiatrists to have that approach to people. I think most of the young psychiatrists probably drop out because it would seem so weird to them after all their medical training before they went to their psychiatric residency. But what a different world would be in. And I'm waiting. I haven't gotten a single response to that yet from these several hundred people to that recommendation. So it's going to be interesting to see what's going on. And Pinar, you must deal with this just all the time. I would think that every person you go up to as a consultant, you must to some degree be thinking about making them comfortable and thinking about the situation they're in, being visited by a psychiatrist. Can you share some of that with us?
Actually, it's kind of funny that you said, it's kind of important to acknowledge, I don't know if you want to call it the divine or however you want to view it. When I was taking one of my USMLE steps, it was the CS, the clinical skills step, and you go in and you have an actor or an actress portraying a patient. And I just remember distinctly one of the comments that they gave was, as I entered the room, I bowed down to them, or at least that's how they perceived my body language. And they loved me for it. And I think that is a fundamental human need. Like, we need to be approved of on some level. We need to be acknowledged. We need, people to, value us. And if at some point in time that's not going on, the communication ends. Or so says Dale Carnegie in his book, How to, I don't want to try to sell his book, but it's kind of...
Sell his book. I mean, I think it's a very good read.
It's absolutely necessary. I mean, not just in healthcare, but day-to-day life nowadays. There's so much disgruntlement and anger on social media, and just even my day-to-day anxiety, and just, I don't know, a sense of discontentment. And I don't want to say it's just in the media or the social media. I just see it, and I just want to kind of remind people, hey, we're all in this together. You might not necessarily agree with a certain person on religion or politics or how they're leading their life, but that's not the point. We all have something to teach each other. We all have to, respect each other. And, there is a power dynamic in healthcare in some degree. People come to Pam because they know that she spends all day researching certain things that they haven't had time to research yet. But it does make a difference when Pam says, well, hang on, I don't know your entire life and what you've been through and why you're yelling at me right now. There's a good reason for it, I imagine, and we can't go into all that detail right away, but maybe we could talk about what's bothering you the most. And it's really, I think one of the things that I try to emphasize my colleagues here in the hospital to do is try to figure out the patient's agenda or the client's agenda. Because
that's so important.
We go in there like, we're going to fix this heart disease, we're going to fix their stroke symptoms, or we're going to fix this, and all they want is a place to stay, or all they want is, this other completely unrelated issue to go away that wasn't even on our radar. It's kind of amazing what we learn when we just listen to each other and try to put yourself in the other person's shoes. Mm-hmm. And I love how, Peter, when you go into the hospitals when you were younger, you would just treat the patients as though they were you or your loved ones, and how you would want to be treated. And if we just stopped and did that in all of society for not just healthcare, but all professions, like, life would be so different right now. I think a lot of this anxiety and would kind of go away for a lot of people. And I really encourage people to go back and read some of these old time self-help books, because it's not just self-help, it's just basic common sense. This is how society, humans evolved to be in these groups, to understand each other, to work with each other, to communicate. And we're losing that communication ability. Mm-hmm. So, part of that, giving them a sense of ability to control their lives, you have to show them that they're capable of doing it. And I always try to make it a point to, it sucks you had this stroke, but man, it sounds like you're a very caring person and you really want to help your loved ones still. And I think you could pull through this if you, really try and, try to point out people's strengths and what they have going for them, and just encourage them in ways that they probably haven't heard in a long, long time. It goes such a long way, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I'll tell you something interesting. A physician here in town that I have known as an acquaintance for a long time has been very bothered by some of the things that we're talking about in medicine, the arrogance, the lack of connection, and all that sort of thing. And I'm going to dig up this study. He did a study of residents at a couple of different universities, and he administered psychological tests to them. And the results were kind of frightening, actually, in terms of some of the personality quirks. I mean, some of them were close to registering as severely psychologically disturbed people. And in further interviewing them, he found out that a lot of them were very unhappy people, on top of some of their psychological quirks. And he made a comment that I think is really interesting in this article that he wrote about it, and that was that medical school tests people's intellect to a certain extent. That's what it's all about. And you have to be smart to go to medical school. I don't see people who aren't pretty with it getting through it, right? But there's another aspect that we probably should be paying attention to, and that is seeing what kind of people we're admitting to medical school, because it's quite possible to admit a brilliant person here who has absolutely nothing going on in terms of emotional connection. And that's where you get this very bad bedside manner kind of thing, just no ability to personally connect. And by way of example, I had one of our members who had breast cancer visited with an oncologist, and took her husband, even said, can we record this? Because we're trying to, we're a little bit nervous and upset and emotional right now. We want to keep a record. Oh, fine, go ahead. That's a very good idea. And so the fact that he knew he was being recorded and did this is almost beyond the pale. But at a certain point in time, he interrupts her when she's asking questions. And he goes, okay, well, let me just get to the bottom line here. He goes, we got to make a decision about this, get the show on the road, because I'm going on vacation next Friday. And she says,
Oh, dear.
okay, so you're telling me to schedule my treatment around your vacation? And he goes, well, I'm just saying, I'm going on vacation, so we're going to need to get this going. And she said, okay, well, goodbye. And they got up and they walked out. But like I said, it's bad enough that you would do this anyway. But the fact that you think it's so okay, you're being recorded and you know it and you say it anyway, just it's such a disconnect, right?
Yeah.
Because I wouldn't say that to a neighbor who came over to see me about something, let alone a person who was paying me to help them, right? I mean, it just is amazing. So obviously this is a person who I'm sure if some kind of evaluation had been done before admittance to medical school, some questions would have been raised about whether or not this is the kind of person, particularly helping people with cancer. I mean, it's one thing to, if you're a dermatologist taking off moles, but for crying out loud, if you're helping cancer patients, I think you need to have a little bit better connection with people. So anyway.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think that it's so important to focus on relationship and to focus on not personally, those of you who aren't particularly in service professions, to focus on just kindness in general. Mm-hmm. It's good for the soul, it's good for the spirit to be kind, to be caring, to orient to other people, to be interested in what other people have to say. It's so unique often for a person to have anyone show any interest in them, whether it's on a date or sitting in an airplane or at any other time. And I know I've been on some airplanes, or I've been with younger people, maybe some of the people flying in and out to Cornell or Ithaca College out of Ithaca haven't been on airplanes very much. And they're often anxious and nervous, and I'll acknowledge that with them, and then I'll just ask them things about themselves, show an interest in them. Mm-hmm. And the flight turns into an experience in which they no longer feel at all helpless and overwhelmed by giving up control to the pilot, to the airplane, to whatever other things in the back of their minds, controls things like airplane disasters. Just being interested. Mm-hmm. And expect that from other people. Expect your doctor to be interested in you. Expect someone on a date to be interested in you. Expect your wife, your husband, your friends to be interested in you and be interested in them. And you'll get to be my age and you'll just have a circle of people around you who are just absolutely wonderful. Mm-hmm. Including the two of you, Pinar Miski and Pam Popper. I mean, you're part of my circle. But I also have people who, help around the house and come through the house for one purpose or another, or help my mother-in-law who lives here now, and Jean. And we just create an environment where people are very respectful and loving toward each other. And it's interesting that how much people change in response to that environment, how appreciative they are of that kind of environment. It is possible, folks, to build a loving environment, but you have to know you have a right to it, and other people have a right to it too. Mm-hmm. And that you can go ahead and do that and to just create a good world around you. And that's part of the lesson that the Pinar is talking about from that book. And I think I learned a lot from that as a very young person, maybe 17 years old, reading that book.
I'm going to read it again.
Peter, I love your airplane analogy, because when you take the principles of what we've been discussing today about learned helplessness, the ultimate, extreme of it is that we're all going to die someday anyway, right? I mean,
right.
we will try to improve the quality of our lives and try to maintain disease-free, symptom-free. But in the end, we're all kind of sort of going in that direction. We're in that airplane, and we all got to land at some point, or however you want to analyze it. But ultimately, yes, it's the relationships between people that serve as, they've done tons of studies. People that have the best relationships, the most connections, are the healthiest. If you look at the Blue Zones book, it's that sense of society and connectedness. And
what is the Blue Zones? What's the Blue Zones book?
So it's 7 different societies that have the longest lived, functionally longest lived, like Okinawa, Loma Linda, California, Ithaca, Greece, etc. They study the things that these populations are doing to allow their members of society to live healthfully for so long. And
you said Ithaca, is that Greece or here?
Icarus.
Icarus. My bad. I'm influenced by you listening to what you're saying. Yeah. But there's like 7 different populations across the world, and they all have certain things in common. And it's another really good book that I encourage everyone to read. And one of them is that social connectedness. And when people study, individuals in hospice at the end of their lives, they never look back and think, gosh, I wish I had another sports car, or gosh, I wish I had another medal or another trophy.
Right.
They're always looking back on their life thinking, I wish I spent more time with this person. I wish I fixed that relationship. I wish I got to know this person more. It's always the relationships that deep down matter the most. Mm-hmm. So don't want to sound too much like a hippie here, but this is the reality of who we are as human beings. We need each other. We need each other to be functional and productive and caring of each other as best we can. Nobody's perfect, but hey, just trying. I think that goes a very long way.
To your point about what's important with relationships, I've been really working on this myself. Like, I work a lot and I love what I do. I love working. It's not like I come here and I think I'm in the salt mines, but a good example, Christmas Eve, I was in here making videos in the office, and I got a text message from a couple of friends of mine. You want to meet for dinner tonight? We're going at 6:00 to this new restaurant. And I started to answer no, because I'm making videos and I'm doing this thing. And then I thought, you know what? I can go have dinner and come back here and make more videos. And that's what I should do, because really the videos I'm not on any deadline. It's Christmas Eve, for crying out loud. The webmaster isn't going to post it today or tomorrow. And so I caught myself, because I'm so task oriented sometimes, and said, yes, I will be there. And then I went and had dinner, and I came back to the office and finished what I needed to do. And I thought, this is the way to live life, not to be so task oriented all the time. And I think that, high achievers, everybody has problems with this, but I think it's a particular issue with high achievers who have aspirations and all this kind of stuff. And you don't have to give that up. You just have to temper it with there's other stuff that's important too. And I'm glad you brought that up. I think it's good for everybody to think about.
So Pam actually does take breaks.
Oh, I do. And I've always done that to a certain extent, but my organized mind and everything else is like the first Thursday of every month is book club, and I never miss that, and it's on my calendar. But the spontaneity thing, I don't do very well. It's like, I plan to make videos. I have to make videos. I have to finish the videos, but no, I don't. I can finish the videos and have dinner. These are not mutually exclusive kinds of things. I can do both things. And that's where I have the difficulty, is just saying, what the heck, I'm just going to go, and I could even make the videos tomorrow. Wow. I could not finish them today, and nobody would know the difference, because everybody else is celebrating Christmas. I don't, but the point is that nobody's posting these stupid videos until next week anyway. So, you have to constantly talk to yourself about this stuff to sort yourself out. And I think that's good for people to know, because sometimes in a format like this, people watching think, oh, those people have it all together. Actually, no, we don't. Very messy up here, working on it all the time, right? And
I think that's really, really important. I mean, we all have to work on our gardening. I mean, I think of the guilt, shame, and anxiety like weeds in my garden, and I have to identify them, and I have to pull them out, and then I have to have sunshine, which is love, and the strength of being in charge of a life, and planning a life, and planning a loving life, and just pulling out that stuff from childhood which crops up. And it's amazing, as you get older, you really can have a better and better life. And even scientific studies show that people in their final decades are often much happier, even though they're losing more friends, and even though their health isn't as good, because they've somehow learned to enjoy the moment of life and to find ways to not be overcome by feelings of helplessness and all the other negative stuff. So it really can be done. And if you're really young and listening or watching us, you probably have a fear of death. If you're an adolescent or you're young, it's very common to be afraid of death. But let me tell you, as you get older, a distant friend. Death is I've never said that before. Death is a distant friend. It's like, no, you live a good life, and as you grow older, you'll be happy with that life, live a principled life, a loving life, avoid getting helpless, learn about your emotions, promote the good ones, reject the bad ones, and build relationships. There's absolutely nothing as important, I believe, and we all believe, really. I keep wanting to look down at you instead of at the camera because my dear friends I'm looking at now. But now I look up at the camera and I think it looks like I'm looking at you. But, well, you two are very, very important to me, and I'm really glad to have you in my life. And to have you come here
I'm glad
periodically.
to have both of you. Both of you,
What a coincidence, me too.
What was that, Pinar? I didn't hear you.
Yes, I was saying it's a coincidence, but I feel the same way.
Yes, it's a wild coincidence. We've got about 6 or 7 minutes left. Pinar reminded me that Valentine's Day is coming up. We don't do a lot with Valentine's Day. Ginger and I tried to make every single day Valentine's Day. We really do. We really try to wake up in the morning, look at each other, smile with love. And we've managed to do that pretty well, even through these viruses, which she got shortly after I did, but hers is not taking as long, and she's doing better already, my Ginger. But we try to live every day as if it's Valentine's Day. I can tell you, it is just a joy. It's a miracle to do that. So, Pinar, what are your thoughts on Valentine's Day?
I'm with you. I think it should be every day. I mean, it's like any other holiday. I don't like the idea of it coming and, okay, here are your flowers. I've done my duty. No, a relationship is like a lifelong commitment, and it's something you have to work on. It's a process. It's not an entity that's static, and I don't know. I can't speak for my husband, but I'll say, we got married, and then I kind of got a little lazy, and I got distracted with work, and it was like, oh no, why is he so distant? And I had to look back at myself, and I started journaling, and I started figuring things out. Like, maybe it's because I'm like all over the place, and unlike Pam, I'm the complete opposite. I want to be spontaneous and do whatever, whenever. And in the process, I realized I wasn't getting anything done. And so journaling and meditation helped me personally figure out, I miss my husband. I need to spend more time with him. And I decided I'm going to weed out the hobbies that I do in a solitary manner, and I'm going to do the hobbies that both he and I enjoy and focus on those things. And that'll help both my relationship and some hobbies. And it's made like a world of a difference in the past year. It's just night and day. And I can't say, like, if death were to come tomorrow or whenever, I don't care, because this is like my best life, as best as I can do it now, as far as I could tell. I'm in agreement with you, though. The older I get, the happier I seem to feel, because, that maybe that sense of control or whatever, I don't know, but whatever it is, I'm definitely happier now than 10, 20 years ago. And I hope it goes on that way. But yeah, every day should be Valentine's Day, and it shouldn't just be a Hallmark holiday. It should be love all the time. And definitely.
But there's nothing wrong with celebrating Valentine's Day and reminding you to try to keep that standard every day.
Yeah, it's like he wants to go ice skating somewhere, and I'm the biggest klutz in the world. So I'm pretty sure the next time you see me, I'll have like a caster on one of my arms, or maybe hopping around with a cast on my leg. But, that's what you do. If you care about somebody, you might sometimes have to go a little out of your comfort zone and try different things out. And we'll see what happens. But, spice it up. Make it exciting. Make it different. Learn about each other, It's fascinating to me to think that I've been around this person for as long as I have, and yet I'm not privy to their thoughts. And it's just like, gosh, I wish I could read your mind, but maybe I'd be afraid maybe I need to talk with the mind control people about getting a device to read his mind. That might be interesting. Or maybe I'd be afraid of what I found. I don't know. I just hope he doesn't watch this anytime soon.
Yeah. Excuse me.
You could use a mind control device on your kitty too, and figure out what Schroeder's thinking for, what kind of treat is he going to want for Valentine's Day?
Yeah, more tuna. Tuna is the thing. The cats are much easier to get a handle on. Pretty much we know what they want. Lots of petting, mommy time, and tuna.
Aww.
It's interesting. Ginger and I, we probably spend at least 2 hours every day together in the evenings. We sit together, we play a little cards, which is our way of fiddling while we talk. We might watch a little TV. But I'm still learning about her, and she's still learning about me. And we've been doing this for 38 years now. And we also keep growing. So we keep learning new things about ourselves and then sharing them with each other. And it just feels like a miracle to have this kind of love. And don't get cynical out there and feel bad, folks, because I didn't have the ability to be with Ginger until I was in my late 40s. So, and we met when I was much younger, when I was in my late 30s, and I couldn't handle it. I got so scared by loving somebody so much, I just disappeared. I didn't want to get hurt that bad. And then, and I tell this to my patients, hey, the person you like so much right now and you feel comfortable with me, me really began to really blossom in my late 40s. So, and I have patients who turn their lives around in their 50s and 60s, and I do believe my mother-in-law, Jean, is the happiest she's ever been in her life living with us at age 93, living in an environment that is a loving environment. There's just so many opportunities throughout life for people to learn and to grow. It does never end. I think I'm going to start hearing the music. We're all going to start hearing the music, ending the show in a minute or two. Pam, what's on your mind? Just you have a lovely smile on your face. You both have very sweet smiles on your faces. What?
I guess the thing I would add is I'm not in a committed relationship, but I have wonderful committed relationships with so many people. I don't feel lonely. And so it's possible to live the same spectacular life without having a significant other. And I've had that too. I that's why I live with a cat, by the way. I tried humans, that didn't work out so well. Cats have worked out much better for me in terms of living, cohabitating. But anyway, Valentine's Day, the idea that every day is a day that you show love to other people, that you wake up and say, what can I do for somebody today that would make a difference? What could I do to help somebody today that would make their life different? And if you start, it's hard to be miserable if you start your day thinking about what you're going to do for somebody else. The only time you feel miserable is when you're so focused on yourself. That's when people are miserable, It
sounds good. Pinar, you're nodding. You're, I'm sure, in total agreement with what Pam's saying.
Absolutely. That's a great way to end things, I'd say.
Pinar Miski, Pam Popper, good friends, people I love, people who love me. And we have based our lives on, especially as we've grown up, on giving to others, and it just pays off. Love life. Doesn't mean you have to have a significant other. Have a lot of significant others. Love folks, love life. Thank you so much. We'll be seeing you again in a few weeks. We'll arrange another get-together. Thank you, my wonderful audience, and thank you, PRN FM. Bye.